So today's program is called How to Grow a Sports Franchise, because over the past few years it really has become evident that what's happening with the Seattle Sounders FC is really a case study in how you grow a sports franchise. It really is recognized around the world as a franchise that's doing it right. On stage with me, I have three men who literally represent the history to date of the Seattle Sounders organization. Sorry, Alan. Oldest to newest. But I'll tell you what, these guys are really responsible for what we have in Western Washington when it comes to professional soccer. To my immediate left, owner Adrian Hanauer, head coach in the middle, Brian Schmetzer. He's also a former Sounders player, and former Sounders coach Alan Hinton, also known as Mr. Soccer, and currently I think his job title is ambassador to the organization. So it's great to have all of you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Adrian, I want to start with you. You come from a well-known business family in Seattle. Reading your bio, it's clear that you're a serial entrepreneur. You've been involved in so many different kinds of businesses over the years. I want to know, though, when you fell in love with soccer.
Sure, thanks. Well, first of all, it was nice seeing some goals on that video. It feels like it's been a while since we've seen some of those. So I had to give a little ribbing.
How this is going to go? Wow. I mean,
remember, this is being videotaped right back there.
So I grew up going to Sounders games as a kid. The North American Soccer League came to Seattle in 1974. Alan, you showed up when in '80. Yeah. So I was out watching his teams, going to those games as a kid with my family, going to soccer camps, going to the parties afterwards, getting autographs from the players, and those players became my heroes, and I aspired to be a professional soccer player when I was younger, and it just left an indelible mark in me. And then it wasn't, I went off and did school and businesses, and it was really sort of by chance that I ended up getting back involved on the business side. It was 16 years ago. There was this little team that Alan was instrumental in bringing to Seattle. It was what I call a minor league Sounders. Playing at Memorial Stadium in front of a couple thousand fans a game, was able to, they called it invest in the team. It was more like philanthropy, because it was never going to be a real business. And shortly after doing that in 2002, decided that we really needed to bring Major League Soccer to Seattle, and started working on that, and in 2007 bought the franchise. In 2009 launched.
Wow. Brian, you come from a really well-known soccer family. Tell me a little bit about your family, and I'm guessing that given your family history with soccer, you probably started dribbling a soccer ball as soon as you could walk.
that is true. My father's a first-generation German immigrant. We came in 1962. Some of my childhood memories, prior to the Sounders, because I, like Adrian, watched the Sounders in Memorial Stadium 1974, Dave Gillett, Pepe Fernandez, all of those guys, people that are still investing in our community now. But I remember watching my dad play. The Germans had a team, the Italians had a team, the Polish had a team, the English had a team, and down at Inner Bay there was games going on Saturdays and Sundays, and my dad would drag me down there to watch. We started a local team, a neighborhood team called the Lake City Hawks when we were 6 and 7 years old. We went all the way through U18, so 10 years. Out of that team, it's a lot different now because they're select and all of that, but out of that initial group of 15 kids, there were still 10 of us remaining at U18. Some of those guys are the best friends that I have today. So growing up around here, my parents started a soccer-only store, so soccer has been pretty much included in the fabric of almost every aspect of my life.
And what I love about this story is that when Brian was 17 years old, the guy in the end came to Seattle as the coach of the Seattle Sounders, and he recruited this 17-year-old kid that is right here in the middle. And this guy came full circle and is now the head coach of a Major League Soccer franchise. I mean, I don't think it gets much better than that for both of you guys. Alan, talk about that 1980 team. It was, you guys were what, 25-7 in the regular season, the best record ever for that type of soccer in America. Tell me how you came to Seattle and how you put that team together.
First of all, thanks for the invite to come here today. You are the best. Is he the best or what? Mark, yeah. You're such a gentleman, and we appreciate it, and we know you're a big fan of the Sounders along with your son. But this story about the Sounders is a wonderful story. I mean, when I came here at the end of November '79, I just got fired by the Tulsa Roughnecks. Now, just to tell you how stupid it was for me to get fired, my last game for the Tulsa Roughnecks was in Giant Stadium in the semifinal of the North American Soccer League playoffs. The crowd was 76,000 people. And they fired me, mainly because I had 3 players who were owed money, and I had no choice but to back the players, otherwise they would have not backed me and we'd have lost every game and I would have got fired anyway, you know? So, but for me, getting the job in Seattle, I could have had the San Jose job at the time, but Seattle was a place I knew fairly well because I was a player for Vancouver in '78, an assistant coach up there, so I knew the city and I knew the Kingdom, which was always a great place to play. But when I got here, the team hadn't made the playoffs in '79. They changed the ownership from the Nordstroms, from Ned Skinner, from Herman Sarkowski, who wanted to do the Seahawks, I think. So a local businessman named Vince Coluccio bought the team. I think he paid $2 million for it. The only person who ever paid for a franchise in the North American Soccer League was probably Vince, because it was a lost leader, as Adrian's just said. But I'm from the big leagues. I played 500 games in the big league in England. I played some games for England, only 3. Should have played more. But the player in front of me was better, Bobby Charlton. So I got the job here, and I'm from the big league, and I immediately came to Seattle. I stayed in the Edgewater, and of course they were showing off the Beatles room and all that stuff at the Edgewater. And I met Wayne Cody. And I'd never seen anybody so big in my life. So I go on the radio with him, and he's like that. He's like that. But he was great, and we became good friends. And then I did a little trick. I went, my wife was with me. It was snowing. I said to my wife, Joy, I said, I'm going to take you to Canlis, which we all know is a very fancy restaurant, right? Was then and still is today. I go up to the maitre d', and I said, table for 2, please. He said, we're full. And I go, I'm the new coach of the Sounders. I want to be a regular customer. Can't you find me a table? He says, no. And I just met Lenny Wilkins a few days before, who'd won the championship. So I said, I suppose if Lenny Wilkins came here, you'd find him a table. He says, oh yeah, they just won the championship. I said, he's not coming, I'll have his table. And John Owen, bless him, John Owen from the PI wrote that story verbatim. Now, you know it's not true, it's just a story, you know? But I've loved being here, and I gotta tell you, these 2 gentlemen here, they make my life so good right now because of the great success. Brian is a local boy. I drafted him on a Sunday morning. I watched him play for Lake City Hawks. He's a left-footed player, but he cut inside on the top of the box. He smacked the ball in the upper V with his right foot. And I said to Bobby Howe, my assistant who was with me, I says, there's our boy. And for a long time, he was 17. I felt so bad that he didn't go to college, because that was probably my fault. But I don't worry about it anymore. Anyway, it's lovely to be here, and thanks for the invite.
That's awesome.
Oh, you're good, Al. You did a great job.
So, Brian, what was it like being a 17-year-old kid drafted by the Sounders, playing in your hometown. Well, tell me some stories
It was
from that period.
intimidating.
Yeah, I bet.
I have a ton of stories, but one of my famous ones, one of my better ones was Bruce Rioch, who was the captain of Scotland at the time, a very, very big player. Our very first training session in the Kingdom, it was massive and, eyes this big, and, I'm ready to receive the ball like this, and all of a sudden from behind, Bruce Rioch just kicks me, and I end up flying through the air and on my back like this. And I remember, and I don't, after years of reflection, I got the gravity of the situation, but he's standing over me and going, "Welcome to the NASL, son." And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed all the senior players were kind of chuckling, kind of laughing, and I was, scared. I mean, I was really scared, and I stayed away from Bruce Rioch the rest of my time there.
So, Adrian, when you had the opportunity to purchase the franchise, did you see it as a good business opportunity, or what was the deciding factor for you?
Well, for sure saw it as a good business opportunity. Thought the timing was right and that soccer was really going to make it in this country, which I think has been borne out. But also, I came from a family that was first and foremost obsessed with, making our community a great place to live, and this seemed like a pretty simple extension of that. Sports, and the platform that provides to do great things in the community was a big part of it. And again, before I lose the chance, our watching that video and seeing all those players that have come through over the years, and kind of thinking back to their involvement in the community and the impact they've had on lives, significantly on kids' lives over that period of time. We have our vision with the Sounders. We sort of rewrote our mission, vision, values, and our vision is to create moments, enrich lives, and unify through soccer. And organizationally, that is what we talk about and think about day in, day out. It's, winning games is super important, and we want to. And we want to win championships. We want to collect trophies. We want to increase revenue and, do all the business metrics, but all of that is about creating moments, enriching lives, and unifying through soccer and making our community a better place to live.
Tell me about some of the other owners. So Joe Roth, right? Drew Carey. How did that all come together in the beginning?
Yeah, so I had become friendly with the commissioner of Major League Soccer since 2001-2 when we had the minor league team. He knew I wanted to bring MLS to Seattle, but honestly, financially, I wasn't in a position to sort of lead the charge. And in 2007, in the spring of 2007, he called me and said, "Hey, there's this Hollywood movie producer named Joe Roth. He wants to bring a team to the Northwest. You guys should be partners." So we met in Denver for the All-Star game in July. We spent about an hour, I would say 55 minutes of that. We talked about poker. We were both poker players, and somehow sort of hit it off talking about poker and decided we'd be partners, and then Paul Allen became involved because of the stadium and the potential relationship with the Seahawks. Joe Roth brought Drew Carey into the fold, and it ended up being sort of this unique, I guess some semi-effective group of owners with disparate backgrounds and interests and strengths.
Was it true in the beginning that some of the owners said, if you don't like us, you can vote us out? Or is that a myth?
No, so
Or is this something that I shouldn't have asked?
no. So it may be the legend has maybe grown over the years, but no, we Drew Carey. One of the things that Drew Carey wanted as he became an owner was to model our franchise to some degree after what exists in a lot of South America and Europe, which is that the fans are involved in the decision making at a very high level and decide on the president of the club. And so we have something that we call democracy in sport. We have tried to use our fan base as have them be more involved, more engaged than just customers. And so our general manager, there's a vote every 4 years on the general manager, the senior soccer official in our organization. It's a vote of confidence or no confidence. And if the fans vote that general manager out, then we will move on and bring someone in that the fans approve of. And it was really just sort of a check and balance on our how effectively we run the organization. And again, we're stewards of this franchise for the fans and the community, and we wanted to sort of practice what we preached.
I want to get back to the franchise in just a bit, but I want to move to Brian for just a sec. Brian, you were an assistant for Siggy Schmidt for a long time. Tell me what your role was like then in terms of how you interacted with the players, and I want to dig a little deeper into your leadership style. I think it must be challenging at times to motivate professional athletes and figure out, how do I motivate this guy as opposed to this guy? Can you pull back the curtain a little bit for us?
Sure. It's a great question. So what I did with Zig, and Zig was a great guy, a good mentor to me. I learned a ton about the MLS and the league, and took bits and pieces from Al over here as far as player management is concerned. Jimmy Gabriel was another one of my mentors, certainly from Ziggy. I was able to, think back and reflect even on my time as a player, way back when, to kind of, thoughts on how to manage people. So with Zig, I was the first assistant, and that was, a reasonably challenging job. I would take kind of the middle group of players. Ziggy would handle the top group, and I'd handle the next group, and some of the younger assistants would handle some of the young guys. But I tried to have touch points with all of them, because it's harder being the top guy, because sometimes players don't want to talk to you. Sometimes they need to talk to you when you don't want to talk to them. So I had to try and, just kind of balance things out. When Ziggy might yell at a younger player, I might come around and put my arm around him and say, hey, he really likes you. He said that because, he believes in you. So there were lots of different things where I could fill in and kind of smooth the water sometimes. Now as the head guy, it certainly is challenging at times. I think my management style, when I first took over in 2016, that was a pretty dramatic time for the club. We had just lost the only coach that we had had. We were not in a very good place as the team was concerned. And what I tried to do was just hold them accountable. Because what I told them when I first took over, and Zig was able to say goodbye, and that very next moment I had to step forward and put something down there to lay the groundwork for how I was going to manage the team. So I decided that it was going to be, I'm going to hold you accountable and give them the message that it's your team. And I made them believe that they could go as far as they believed they could go. And I also, when they made a mistake, wasn't afraid to say to some of the bigger names out there, say, you know what, you made a mistake. And this is how we're going to try and correct it. And they appreciated that honesty. I think they appreciated someone that could come in and say, you know what, okay, maybe I should have thought about that. And the makeup of that group was a very good group. There was a senior core that was there. So my job was challenging at times, but at the same time, it was okay, because that group was certainly motivated to do better. They knew themselves that they were underachieving, and so it was a powerful moment, but I think it turned out okay.
Can I just have to interject that Brian has become just a tremendous manager of people, and we're in a business that is high stress. It's significantly results oriented, as you all know. It's also one that can be really frustrating because you can do all the right things in managing and preparing and getting your team ready, and the ball goes 1/4 inch outside the post instead of inside the post, and you've lost, and this pressure just continues to build, and so Brian, again, sort of short sells his ability to pull this group together, and again, coaching, as from a fan's perspective, coaching is very different than when you're in the middle of it, right? I mean, fans from the outside often see the choice of the starting lineup and the substitutions made, and that determines whether they think someone is doing a good job or not. But it is so much more complicated and multifaceted, and again, I wasn't there to observe Alan, but from some of the conversations I see them having, some of the wisdom that's passed along, Brian's just done an amazing job with the group.
I think part of the problem and the changes from my day, in my days you could be a bit of a bully. One of the reasons why you could be a bit of a bully is the players never had agents in my day, which is a huge problem today, as Adrian has talked about many times. But in my day, I could go to a player and say, I'm not sure you're a good player anymore, but I always picked on a good player. You couldn't put a pressure on a very ordinary player, otherwise you'll lose him for the season. So I used to pick on some people, like Steve Daly, for instance, who I'm going to see next week in Wolverhampton when I'm over in England. He was the most expensive player in British history for a short period of time, and we signed him for the Sounders in 1981. I used to say, hey, Steve, I'm not sure about you. And he'd say, oh, you don't think I can play? And I go, don't know. And I'd play the game until the game started. It was the best player on the field by a mile, Steve Daly. I did it with this young man one time. At the Tacoma Stars was indoor soccer, and we did great. We had the people coming from Seattle to Tacoma for a while, and congratulations, by the way, on playing S2 in Tacoma. It looks like being a home run again. You're so smart. You are so damn smart. So anyway, Brian and Dick McCormick, his mate, and Neil Megson, his other mate, all played for me at the Tacoma Stars. Now, the night before the game in indoor soccer, you could have a couple of beers. And I knew these three would stay out after curfew at least by about a half an hour. So I used to wait at the back door when I knew they'd come in the back door. And they'd come in and I'd go, you guys owe me. Where the hell have you been? So the next day I wouldn't talk to him. I'd go, well, I would. I'd go, you owe me, you owe me. The three players were the best people on the field by a mile. And we won. And that's man management. Now today I'll give you an example of the difference in my day. I had one of the best drinkers of all time playing for the Sounders who might, if there was a vote, he might go down as maybe one of the most brilliant players ever to play for the Sounders, Alan Hudson. Played for Arsenal, Chelsea, England, but he was an alcoholic. In those days, I was his coach. I couldn't say, you got to stop drinking, Alan, because I didn't know a doctor. There was nobody that could take you to the clinic like they can today. So I used to say, I made him the captain of the team. Nobody could keep up with him in the game. He was by far the fittest. But on a Monday when he came in, having been on the booze all weekend, oh man, he looked an old man. But he'd put a wet top on and he'd sweat and sweat. By Thursday, he was looking like his old self. Game night, he'd come in with the best suit on, he'd love the sun, and he'd have a nice suntan. Best player on the field again by a mile. Now today, I've just been down in Tucson, which is lovely, the Sounders training camp in the Westin Hotel, same as this. The bar, there was two teams there, LA Galaxy and the Seattle Sounders. You know how many people were in the bar? Nobody. Nobody. In my day, the bar would have been packed. We used to have a slogan called "Win or Lose on the Booze." And then we'd fly to New York. We'd fly on a Friday morning. We'd play in Giant Stadium, 50, 60,000 on a Saturday. And if the players ever said, I'm tired, I'd go, no, you're not. You're not fit enough. So I'll have you back this afternoon for extra running. Oh, well, I'm okay, coach. You know what I mean? But today, players are very sensitive to what they need to be ready to play in the big games. Now, don't forget this modest young man here, Brian, when he just made some remarks, he never did say that in his first year, when he took over a team that was on the downslide big time, that they won Major League Soccer championship. And the big one was never won. And you know what I mean by the big one. Jimmy Gabriel got to the final against the Cosmos, 1977, in Portland, lost, close game. We got to the final in 82. Brian was in the squad. We lost against the Cosmos, close game. But Brian got the team to the final in Toronto. I was there. Thank you very much, Adrian. That was lovely. And we won the championship. So I called him Sir Brian. Sir Brian. I anoint you Sir Brian. And he goes, what's that for? I says, you just did something nobody did in 40 years. So for me, this club is on the way to being bigger and stronger. Let me ask you a question. How many families in this room are touched by soccer? See what I mean, Adrian? In my day, it wouldn't happen like that. And you know what the most beautiful thing about youth soccer is? Brian paid his dues. He coached Emerald City for many years. Lillian has a son. By the way, Lillian is going to London next week to take her son to watch Arsenal play.
That's awesome.
In the Emirates Stadium, 75,000, just 75,000, that's all. But the game is spreading bigger and bigger and bigger. Concussion is helping soccer because a lot of parents will not let their kids play football anymore because it's very tough. Today in soccer, concussion has a protocol. And I don't think it's anything to do with the coach or the owner. In my day, I got knocked on the head a few times. That's why I'm probably still a bit wacko. Anyway, the trainer would come on the field, and he wasn't a trainer. He hadn't been to school. He was a former player. And he'd go, and he'd go, what's your name? And you go, Elvis Presley. He'd go, what's the score? Well, we're winning 3-0. How many of you scored 2? Okay, you're okay. Send him back on the pitch. Because today is a different deal.
Yeah, Alan.
So soccer's on the move, and I'm sorry to keep talking, but
That's
I could
okay.
go on forever. I'm so pleased with this club.
The reason that we asked you here is that you're a man of passion. And that's you've fulfilled your role, my friend. I want to ask Brian and Adrian, when we talk about developing, where are we in the development of soccer in America? Because we look at players like Jordan Morris, who came up through your system, homegrown players. Where are we when it comes to the development of players and how we compare to other leagues around the world?
I'll start. You can take it home. For me, to use a baseball term, I think we're in the second or third inning. We're still in the early stages, and we're getting our feet under us and how best to organize ourselves in this big, diverse nation of ours. We're in a very different situation in the United States in that we have, 4 bigger sports. We have 10 different sports that kids are involved in today, maybe 20, 30. And in the rest of the world, really, there's kind of one, maybe 2 in certain parts of the world. But so that means that we're not necessarily getting all the best athletes into our sport to begin with. The structure is different in that in the rest of the world, they're developing young soccer players to be professional players. In our country, most of the development happens in youth clubs that are trying to win, and maybe develop a player to go to college. So that development focused on winning is different than development focused on the individual player becoming a professional player. There is also, again, there's this gap between 18 and 21, 22 years old, where some of our good kids go to college, which is great. You know, that is obviously a very good way to develop young, you know, in our case, young men. But it's not necessarily the best way to develop the best soccer players in the world. So there is a long ways to go in terms of just the infrastructure and how we develop players. But we are making tremendous progress. And Jordan Morris, DeAndre Yedlin, some of the even younger players in our system today are testament to that.
I would say it's multifaceted almost, because you look at Jordan, who went to Stanford for a couple years, allowed him to mature a little bit. Some of the stuff that we take for granted. All of us have children, and when I look at my 3 children growing up, were they ready to play at 16 or 17 years old? I mean, was I ready to play at 17? I didn't know what I was doing. Somebody said, okay, you're going to sign a contract to play soccer. I said, okay.
Bruce Rio thought you were good. That's why he kicked you.
Yeah. So I think what has happened is Adrian is starting to put, the club is starting to put a lot of money into youth soccer, and our academy system is growing. And some of that is bearing fruit, hopefully, in the sense that we've signed Ray Serrano, who's a young 15-year-old, Azriel Gonzalez, a 16-year-old. We have a program where Sam Rogers, who was going to go to, I believe it was Villanova, right? But we were able to hold him here, so he enrolled in the University of Washington so that he can actually go to college and then make sounder trainings with us at S2. So I think there's many different ways to try and solve this. We're trying to obviously streamline it, because it's vital for our success, for our sport, to take care of some of the homegrown players. It's a viable business if we're, Jordan Morris is, of course, before his knee injury, but what was his value on the national or international market? That could be, at some point, we become a selling league, not just a league that's here to develop players to win games. So it's a really, really big topic. It's been talked about because of the failure of the national team getting to the World Cup. It's become, generated even faster, and it's got a lot of passion behind it.
I think, just quickly, Brian will always throw the young kid into the first team. The club's been decimated with injuries. He doesn't complain. He plays the next in line, and if it happens to be a young kid who's come from the academies, in you go, son. And then you find out what, if you don't, in Scotland they used to say, throw the kid in the water, and if he doesn't swim, too bad. But the bottom line is, it throws him in there. And in the end, he's going to find more and more diamonds. The club's already got, they found Jordan, they found DeAndre Yedlin, who's starting every game for Newcastle in the Premier League. So the future's very bright.
Before we go to Q&A from the audience, I have to read something from Wikipedia, Alan. So this, Alan was actually, he was a really big deal in English Premier League soccer. He won 2 Premier League titles. He played for the British national team. And he actually signed a shoe deal back in the day. And he had these glorious white boots, they called them. So the Wikipedia quote, if you look up Alan on Wikipedia, the quote says, whilst at Derby, he was universally and affectionately known amongst the fans by his nickname Gladys, which stemmed from his aforementioned white boots and curly blonde perm, along with his elegant and non-aggressive playing style. So, what does that say, Alan? You were a good player.
Well, I got £1,000 English in 1972 to wear the white boots. Well, it doesn't sound a lot of money today for these superstars, but you could buy a house for £2,000. So I think it was pretty good. And because I was a winger, which meant I'd play right up against the crowds, both home and away, they used to pick on me with these silly names like Gladys, and I used to have long hair, and I think I looked a little bit like a grandma, looking back, long curly hair. I wasn't a tackler, but my coach, bless him, man management, that Brian's so good at, my coach, Brian Clough, said, I don't pay him to tackle, I pay him to score and make a goal. I'll get other players to tackle, to get the ball, to give it to Alan. Now, how do you think I felt when he said that? I felt like $1 million. So, for me, I'm 75, I'm recovering from cancer. I'm completely clear. I had my bladder out and my prostate 3 years and 3 months ago. I went to the great Dr. Lynn at University Medical Center. He said, if you don't let me take your bladder out, you'll be dead in 2 years. Well, I'm on bonus time now, so that's why I'm hugging this mic.
Alan,
All
we're
right.
glad that you're here.
So
let's open it up
We've got
to questions from the audience. Carl Benke.
So just a little history. My family was part of the original ownership of the original Sounders, and it was the Skinner family, Sarkowski, Monty Bean, there was a Weston group, and the Nordstroms. And we all owned an equal amount. Walt Daggett was the general manager. John Best was the original coach. And we were the first event in the Kingdom when we played the New York Cosmos with Pelly, and we sold it out.
by the way, your father, your father was one of the greatest gentlemen I ever met in my life. He was such a lovely man.
question here. Mic working? Yeah.
Hello. I'll just thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and your passion. It is awesome. My question geared towards the owner, Adrian. And I wanted to understand your influence on the players, the coaches, the management, the fans is felt. Who is the influence in your life as an owner within soccer and outside the sport of soccer?
Great question.
Wow. Well, look, I probably have the sort of scripted answer that a lot of people have. My dad, sort of growing up in a family business, was a massive influence on me and who I am as a person. As far as sort of the soccer side of things, sports business side of things, I would say that my single greatest influence is a guy who's likely headed back to our community, a guy named Todd Leiweke, who was the original CEO of the Sounders, helped found the Sounders with us as the CEO of the Seahawks. Went on to the Tampa Bay Lightning, was the number 2 at the NFL, and is now, very highly likely coming back to run the new NHL team with his brother Tim Leiweke. Todd, one of the smartest, best leaders in professional sports, but also just an amazing individual. Quick story, and again, I wish I could emulate this. 3 months after he left Seattle and went to Tampa to run the NHL team down in Tampa, I went to visit him, and we were walking around the arena, the NHL arena, and I swear he knew every single person's name that worked in that arena. The security people, the ushers, the people in the concession stands. That's the kind of guy he is. He makes everyone feel good and feel like they want to be, working hard and smart and getting behind him and making organizations successful. So we're going to be really lucky as a community if Todd comes back here.
Gentlemen, Jeff Borick, IBM, thanks for being here, a season ticket holder. Question for Brian, Coach Brian. Ladero and Dempsey both get beaten like a drum. And so how do you coach around that? What strategy do you use to try and protect them, and then with the recent red card, how do you make that a teachable moment for Dempsey? Thanks.
So if both of them like to touch the ball a lot, so if they're getting kicked, I tell them to get rid of the ball a little quicker. That's number one. Number two is I make sure that we try and put them in the right spots and make sure that the ball gets delivered with the right timing to make sure that when they're open and not when a defender's grappling all over them, there's certain subtle tactical ways to avoid that situation. But soccer is a contact sport, and the guys that are the best players or the guys that make our team run sometimes become targets. It's unfortunate as the sport of soccer grows, we don't want to have that happen anymore, like in our day where Bruce would kick people for no reason. But it still happens. So we try and do it in both those ways, try and make them to play a little faster and make sure the team understands. And then if Roman needs to be their bodyguard every now and again, that's okay too. So the unfortunate red card situation with Clint, I think Clint is targeted. I think the players know that they can get under his skin. I do think that Clint, though, is a really big team guy. He apologized afterwards, and we are moving forward with that. That is not an issue at all. Stuff happens, and you use it as a coachable moment, not just for Clint, but for the rest of the group. And we'll solve those things internally as we always do, but the team is always the most important focus. Team comes first.
Last month there was a pretty high drama election for the new head of USA Soccer. Considering what's going on with the national federations and other sports, how important is USA Soccer overall to you, and what do you think about what's going on there?
Yeah, I'll take that. Again, super complicated, and I could probably spend half an hour answering it. But the drama around a new head of U.S. Soccer really came out of one night in soccer where the United States lost a game in Trinidad, and a whole series of other events happened so that the United States didn't qualify for the World Cup in 2018. And because of that, there was all this, in my opinion, overreaction and this feeling that we had to sort of burn the whole thing down and start from scratch. And U.S. soccer, soccer's going like this, and there are going to be blips along the way. Again, the United States not qualifying for the World Cup, Chile didn't qualify for the World Cup. The Netherlands didn't qualify for the World Cup. Much bigger soccer nations, Italy didn't qualify for the World. Much bigger soccer nations than us. So. That said, we can always do better. The whole development question and how we continue to develop young players is a big piece to the puzzle. And for sure, the relationship that our league has with the leaders of U.S. soccer is important, just so that we can continue to grow our league and the sport nationally. But we are the winner of the election was a guy named Carlos Cordero, former Goldman Sachs guy. We're very comfortable that he will continue to lead U.S. soccer in a good direction.
So we're out of time. Lightning round, though. Adrian, when are you going to open up all the seats in the stadium so we have a sellout at every game?
Slow and steady wins the race.
Okay. Right now you're averaging over
44,000.
44,000. Brian, do you have any interest in coaching the U.S. men's national team if it became a possibility?
I got to stick to what I do now first, and I want to go back to your original question. Thank you for saying all those nice things. Thank you. But I couldn't do my job without my assistants as well. That's another reason why we have a lot of success. So if I could take my assistants with me, maybe.
Okay. Let's give a round of applause. Adrian Hanauer, Brian Schmetzer, Alan Hinton.